Hey,
know.
everybody.
All chest, all
We're
chest.
just such surface. I mean, we're such surface.
My Purelator showing up. I just
Yeah, we're
attended
all
the
from
Rudy
Los
Reyes
Angeles.
freaking, like the
Skin deep.
concert. It
happening.
was freaking magnificent. Now it's all chest. Freaking
We're
bring
all-
it, boys.
We're 20 seconds in already, and we're losing our. This is fantastic. The green room carries on. Well, first off, hey everybody, welcome back to the collective. We're here. We got another wicked show planned out for you today. Very excited. We got Rudy rejoining us, as everybody can see. We got Chad rejoining us, as everyone can see. Sean is here as always, and I'm here to run us through the hero's journey. Now, while I am excited to do that, y'all should be too. Make sure you're liking the show, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, do all that good stuff. Get your emails when we go live on Fridays right now and Wednesdays with the Gold Mine. If you have any thoughts, questions, comments, anything at all, by all means, put them up in the comment section. We will engage those throughout the show. Let's get some intros out of the way, and then we will jump right into the convo. Chad, you're on top. Hit us up. 10, 15 seconds.
Chad Mclean, Mental Joe out here in Peoria, Arizona. What's going on, world?
It's going, man. It's awesome. Rudy, how about yourself?
Fantastic, Rudy Reyes. Little Elm, Texas, outside of Frisco. Motivated, dedicated, and happy to be here.
Outstanding. Sean, how's life in the mountains?
Well, it's good today. I got to say, started off real well this morning. Before anyone saw us go live, we were already freaking live in the green room, having a heck of a good time. And I don't know. I don't know what it is about today, but I'm gonna freaking own it. And so here it is. Chance, you and I are on about, I'm not quite sure the math, but we're coming up on about 400 podcasts now between the Gold Mine podcast and the Collective podcast. Of course, I've done a boatload of other podcasts. You've done other podcasts. Here we are. But I don't know, man. Like this morning, I was looking forward to this conversation because it's a good team, good crew. But I don't know. It just feels like it's the right time to call it out for what it is. This is a freaking hero's journey that we're on right now with the podcast, with the people that we've met, coming up on, I don't know, damn near 700 guests. And the people that we've met, the people that have shaped our journeys, if we're heroes in our own movie right now, all four of us, then our movies are intertwined through podcasting, through community, through veterans, through the people we met who know us, that know you, that know them. This whole freaking thing is a hero's journey as far as I'm concerned. So putting the topic to the side for a moment, I just want to call it out for what it is. Thanks, fellas, for joining us on our own individual and team hero's journey.
100%.
For sure. Collective. I mean, that's it, brother. Collective. And while you were riffing on that, Sean, I was remembering Excalibur, and I was thinking about Camelot and, in the Arthurian legends and the Knights of the Round Table. And that's what really spoke to my heart as you were sharing about the hero's journey and how we are, although individually we're battlefield commanders in our lives individually, but coming together in the hero's journey as the Knights of the Round Table is what's happening. It's happening organically. Not to say that you three gentlemen have not put a lot of work into your own walk and your own climb, and everyone's cliff is a challenge. But it seems to me that this is coming together with a higher intelligence than us individually, and I'm just happy to be here.
Absolutely. This is one of the things, and actually, Sean, you mirrored my point I was going to make ahead of time. The collective is a hero's journey. We all have our own individual hero's journey, but it also reminds me of like the Fellowship of the Ring.
Yes, sir.
Each individual person has their own story and their own backstory and their own thing that they've all done, just like us. And every time we come on here, every time we go live, every time we have a discussion, we get to expand that journey just a little bit more, and then that fellowship grows just a little bit more, and it's such a great feeling. And this is one of the reasons why I want to talk about this concept. But before I do, just want to jump on these. KH, hey all, checking in, been a while. Good to see you, Carl. Satch in Motion jumping in here. Good morning, team. Period, as you always say. This is where I want to start this. So the hero's journey. I was doing some reflection the other day, and I was talking with some friends, and we had gotten into this larger discussion as to how our lives can sometimes mirror one another in different stages, different periods, and like, oh, I went through this and it took me this long to get through it, to get to this point where I am now, et cetera, et cetera. And they're like, oh, that happened to me, but it was when I was younger. And then I was talking about how for my kids, I want the same thing, but I want them to have their own journey, not just follow my path, all these things. So I wanted to get right off the bat your guys' initial thoughts on your own journey, your own path, your own decisions that you've made throughout your life, and how you apply that, or how you apply the hero's journey to those experiences. So, Rudy, you're on top. Let's get it started.
Yes, my man. You know, I was born in 1971, and some of my very first memories. Now, my father, his name's Rudy Reyes Sr., Marine Corps, Vietnam, but he's not my biological father. I didn't find this out till a long time later. My biological father was also Marine in Vietnam and did a few tours, and he never came back. But this father of mine, Rudy Reyes Sr., loved me so much. He married my mother when she was pregnant with another man's child. And he, by 3 years old, by the time I was 3, he was now in the sheriff department. And while my father and my mother were married, I think till I was 4 years old. And I remember waking up, smelling these blueberry muffins that my mother was baking. This is on the border of South Texas. And hearing my dad's boots, cowboy boots, and the sound of his gun belt. And as I walk into the kitchen, the lights coming in through the blinds like it is right now, and I'm seeing the glint off of his badge and his name placard, his whistle, and the big 357 on his hip. And if you guys recall the old leather works that they used to do, law enforcement leather works, it was a textured leather. And I just knew then that I want to be like my dad, and that my dad stands for something or is something beyond just a regular person. And I don't even remember seeing his face because I was small, and I saw his gun belt as he's walking by. And then he sat down, and I remember just staring at the weapon and what that meant, staring at the star and what that meant. And it hit me then. I wanted to be a hero, So I'll start with that.
I love it. Chad, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I would even reflect on that for like what Rudy said as far as where I'm at right now. With the mental Joe thing, and speaking about my mental health and holding space and learning to develop and to be a real man, right? Like,
Well said.
I want to be that hero for my boys, right? And I can't do that being the average Joe sitting on the couch eating a bag of Doritos. Like, I have to level up every day. And that even encompasses when my boys are losing their crap. It is my ability to hold that space for them so they can, have some emotional intelligence. They need to release those emotions. And so I need to hold that space for them as opposed to yelling at them or fathering in a different manner. So in light of how Rudy remembered his father in moments and how he looked up to his dad, that's why I want my boys. And so I don't want to be that average Joe, right? I want to level up. I want to crush every ceiling possible. So they look at it and go, hey, that's the standard dad was doing, or hey, that's a standard dad hung out with. Like, I want to be in regards of, my son's 40, 50 years now making a statement like someone like Rudy was making.
Absolutely. Sean, thoughts on this?
I think the interesting thing about the hero's journey is it is a story. It's a fable. It's a mythology. It's an idea. And I think that not everyone gets to live a hero's journey, man. I think that not everyone even understands that there's a hero's journey because it's mythology. It's you're not, when you're born, you don't take a number that says number 64 and you wait until the 64th person has gone in front of you and then you get to enter into your hero's journey. There's no freaking guarantee that you'll ever live a hero's journey. You'll either fall into it by happenstance or you'll create it intentionally. And what you do with those two things is completely up to you. But if you're not aware of this thing called the hero's journey, you've never been on it, and you may never be until you start thinking about it. And so, like Rudy, as the example, like he was in the game before he even knew that there was a game. He was in the game. He just didn't know it yet. And so, I don't want to say I wish my dad would have been wearing a badge and a gun and textured leather belt. And I mean, that was such a classic look, by the way. And so, I didn't have that in my life. There was no one around me that was like that. And so I didn't see heroes, believe it or not, until I joined the military. That's the first time I kind of bumped into them. So that's when I understood this thing called heroes and a journey, and how it is not this glorious manifestation of a Harlequin romance novel. It's edgy. It's dirty and grimy, bloody, sweaty, and tear-filled. The hero's journey, as it's put out kind of in the Harlequin romance novels, only shows the rapier-like wit and the stunning mustache. It doesn't show the blood, sweat, and tears. You don't get any sense of that in the fable. And so I think that something that I'd like to propose that we can maybe talk about at some point in this conversation is how, as men, we have an idealized version of the hero's journey put out by Joseph Campbell and simplified by the interwebs. But then there's a whole dirtier side to the hero's journey. The grit, the grime, the sweat, the blood, and the tears that actually forges the hero. Not the obstacle is in the way. The obstacle is the way. This sterile idea of you bump into problems and you just freaking figure it out, bro, and you keep on smashing and you'll become a hero by the end of the day. That is not the hero's journey. The hero's journey is trying to be a hero and maybe never even coming close to being a hero. That's what the hero's journey looks like. There's no guarantees on the path. There's only the guarantee that the path is there, and it's for you to step on it and walk it.
You bring up an excellent point, Sean, and I think this goes to kind of everything we're talking about, in that it may not be you that is the hero of the larger story. And I think this, we talk about the team a lot, and we talk about the fact that, the concept of a team is an idea as well. It's not a physical thing, it's an ephemeral thing that we all kind of agree upon, that we're working towards. Okay, we're all going to go that way. Cool, let's all do it together. So I look back at, the Fellowship, or any of the stories you want to talk about. You go back to Odysseus, and you along the way, people die, right? People get left behind. They have to make a sacrifice. They have to do all these things. And to your point, Sean, the fact that it is dirty and it is uncomfortable and it is full of temptation and lots of periods of time where you could just stop. You could quit. You could go home. You could just say, okay, I'm done. But that, I think, is what makes that first step so important, is because you have to enter into that almost unbeknownst to the actual difficulty. Because most people, if you knew the difficulty ahead of time, most people would choose not to do it. And I think that romanticism, that concept of like, oh man, I'm going to be Frodo, I'm going to be King Arthur, I'm going to be the guy or the person, but you might be Galahad. You might be Tim that just happens to get taken out by on the ambush, right? Who knows? But you have to go into it almost unbeknownst to it. What do you guys think on that one? Rudy, I'm coming back to you.
So many layers here that we're already getting into. It has me reflecting on a number of things. First and foremost, I just have to share, and because I've been so viscerally honest with my journey in the last 7 years, I'd say, because we're fighting an epidemic of depression and suicide, which I went through as well. And when I was going through it, I thought it was just me, that I had somehow lost myself, and I did. And I was weak. I was weak, and I was close to giving up because the pillars I had in place in service, although it revolved around a few things: constant vigilance, pointed aggression, and an overflow of love for my men and what we're doing. There was no other room for anything else. And I lived that way in such intense kinetic environments of combat. And to be honest, our training and training operations were harder than almost anything I ever did in combat. Matter of fact, many of my men died in training. I could not reconcile my identity out here, and I developed an incredible drug problem and violence problem. I was a shadow of who you see now, and I went through that. I'll say this: without that fall from grace, without that brought to my knees with the pistol in my mouth, without that, I would not be the truly strong man I am now. And the strength is not on the outside. I can't even describe it. We talk about heroes. How about this? The old Rudy Reyes: if you're a civilian, then you are beneath me. If you can't fight and kill, you're beneath me. Now, one of my heroes is my wife's manager. His name's Jack Callahan. Faithful to his wife, 4 beautiful kids, has provided an amazing home for his family, and is loyal and loving. He's a hero. There's been such a transformation for me about how I view the world. And part of that hero's journey is that you're going to be in the mud, and it ain't going to be so lucky. The mud and the gore of combat is actually glorious compared to the real fucking mud of your life when all that's gone. And if you can rise from that, then you can make it.
Yeah. 100%. And I hate to do this, but we are going to have to watch the language going on.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Sorry.
All good. Chad, thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, why do I got to follow Rudy? I mean, you're making this hard on me, pal. It's been a while. Jesus.
But that's what I do.
No, I mean, I reflect with so much, that Rudy said, right? Because like you said, I mean, it's crazy, but next month is, I hate saying it, but next month is my 4-year anniversary of when I almost took my life.
God bless.
And so when I hear a story of Rudy's or other individuals that I consider on maybe a pedestal or a hierarchy because of what they have done, right? A lot of soft guys, right? I put that in a very hierarchical, like those are my Peyton Mannings, right? Those are my Messiers. Those are my Wayne Gretzky's, right? The pipe hitters of the world, right? Because that's what I wanted to do. Unfortunately, I had an accident, right? That took me away from me in my thought of being an operator. So I thought I was a loser forever and ever. I never thought I would ever be in a company of some of these gentlemen that I've met via the collective and learning from them and hearing their stories and realizing, oh my God, these guys are humans, but they're also heroes. And they also are real human beings with feelings, with that self-talk. And these are guys that I put like on all-star teams, right? So being an average Joe and hearing this, it helps guys like myself and others level up and want to level up and realize, oh, someone I look up to also had a tough road, and that is why they are where they are. But if I'm going to hang out in this arena, I have to put in the reps. I have to put in the work. And that's, like if I have a rough day, I'll sit there and I'll think, what would Satch do? What would a Seb do? What would these guys do? No, they would put in that extra rep, Chad. Like you got to keep going. So when I hear these stories, it's like, okay, all right, there's those dark days, there is light, but you have to continually push forward. And again, 4 years this coming up May, I look at it now and I can literally see who I was 4 years ago to where I am now. So I literally I use that as a scale of where I was and where I'm going and how far I actually come. There is a true restart point for me. And that's where I'm at now. Very, very grateful.
Absolutely. Sean, thoughts?
Well, it's a really interesting tangential arc that we're now going in. Not one that I saw actually, but it is actually a great trajectory because I wasn't really thinking of it in the way that Rudy put it across, and he didn't put it across directly as such. But listening to him, this thought bubbled up into my head, and so I when I step into something, we'll call it a potentially new heroic side quest. Let's call it that for now. Called podcasting. And so I didn't know what I was getting myself into. Totally. But I knew enough that I didn't want to do it. And so, Chance, you'd said that the hero's journey is kind of like, you're stepping into the void, and that takes courage. It does. But you know what takes more courage? Stepping into the semi-void, knowing just enough that you're kind of freaking out, but you still fricking hammer on it. And so all of the side quests that we have in life, podcasting to me is a side quest. It is not my warrior way. It is not my main path. It is tangential to my warrior way. It doesn't take me off the path. It just kind of ebbs and flows along next to me, almost on a parallel journey. It's part of me, but it's not really my totality. It's just a side quest, but it's a freaking good side quest that is kind of creating results and kicking ass and kind of completing me to some degree. And so when I entered into podcasting, like I was freaking out. And I do believe that in order to understand what courage is, you've got to have some fear. You've got to step on the start line already scared. And when you cross the start line, more scared, good. You're freaking in the game. And so smashing on that into that void, one isn't better than the other. Entering into the void unknowingly and being freaked out about the unknown, I'm not saying that that's easier or worse or better or lesser than stepping into the void partially knowing what you're getting yourself into. I just want to state that there's two existences there, knowing and kind of not knowing. But that kind of not knowing is kind of scary. And so, we all enter into our path. And then, like Rudy stated, he was in the game that he understood, that he enjoyed, and then he left it. And then he didn't know who he was. And that's what we all kind of go through to some degree. To a greater degree or lesser degree, I think we all go kind of along the lines of what Rudy was illustrating. And so at that point, I think there's a divergence on the hero's journey. Either Rudy is then branching right or branching left. Right is by himself, the solo hero's journey. That eventually he'll bump into some characters, Frodo and all the gang down the road, whatever the case is. And then there's the other branch, which is Rudy takes one step forward and he's got someone right next to him. Now, neither way is better or worse because they both have their betters and they both have their worsers at some point in the journey further down the road. But I think that in your branching moment, you should try to figure out, okay, I'm stepping into the void. I know a tiny little about it. I'm freaking out. This is the hero's journey. Do I do it by myself or do I need help? Do I need someone on my left and right? That's where you have to know yourself. You don't have to know the journey. You have to know yourself. And for me, I want to step off like a Ronin by myself. Like I might keep my samurai sword in my sheath as I step across the start line, but that's the only thing I need at that point is me and my experience. And then when I get down there, if I bump into some cool people and we start kicking that arse, good. But I don't need them standing on the start line with me. But some people do. And that doesn't mean that one way is better than the other. It just means you got to know who you are when you're standing on the start line and make the good decision.
That is a great point. Rudy, what do you got? Go ahead.
I know myself and trust myself now. And I thought I did before because I had a very pointed life. Wrestling, kickboxing, Marine Corps, recon. And it was intense but pointed. So there was not the left and right lateral limits were quite close. Through the fall down and the pain and loss of identity and purpose, by surviving that, where I stand now, Sean, I have never known myself and trust my judgment more than now. And I'm finding myself so much more creative and so much more impactful in ways that I would have never imagined. I feel in some ways, this is my hero's journey 2.0. And for a long time, I walked that path alone, not necessarily because I wanted to, but that's just how it unfolded. But now here I am at the beginning 2.0, and I'm loving every minute of it. I'm present for every minute of it.
Absolutely. Chad, you got any additional thoughts on this?
No, man, that was nail on the head. I'm right along with it all. Yep.
Raj, I was it's interesting because I was thinking how this is flowing exactly the way I thought it was going to go actually. So this is one of the first times this ever happened where I had a plan initially and that we're actually following along lines. And I think this is to your point, Sean, about like having the understanding yourself is the key to this. I think that's part of the cyclical nature of the hero's journey, is that, as to your point, Rudy, as well, is that you're going to hit this 2 or 3 times in the larger scale of the journey itself. Almost like the journey is a wheel along the cog, right? It's spinning the larger wheel by doing this over and over and over again. And so the collective is a great example. Podcasting in general is a great example. The military is a great example. Leaving the military is a great, like, there's all of these different stages of our lives that follow along this trajectory. And it's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring it up today is that it's allegorical across the board. If you really take the time to assess your life and where you are, you could probably find where you are along the journey. And you can say, oh, well, if I'm in the depths of depression, I just want to get to end it all and be gone from this world and don't want to deal with any of this stuff anymore. I mean, that's the abyss. You're sitting in the darkest part of the story. It's the transformation that comes from that turns you into the hero of the story, right? Is the fact that these pitfalls, these difficulties, the points of almost no return are what spur us into those final moments where you get to do the thing, or you get to win the battle, or you get to come back later and tell your story to other people. So, I look at Chad, I look at Rudy, I look at Sean, I look at my own story of going through the difficulties, hitting a rock bottom, slamming into a wall, and then going, where do I go from here? Well, and just start picking a direction and going from there, right? I think that's part of it. Right. So, yeah.
These things, it's a freaking kick in the guts, but it is a catalyst. And then boom, reboot, more infusion, or even more struggle to know yourself better and to know the world better and to take charge, truly leading. And it's so interesting. We're all getting a little older, and we have children, and we have responsibilities. We have scars. We got arthritis. It's even more beautiful for me now at 52. It's sweeter. The walk is sweeter for me now. And it's not because of so-called success. It's because of my acceptance of some of my limitations and mortality. It's sweeter for me because of the mortality I feel now. But it's interesting. When I was running and gunning in Fallujah, I didn't care. I didn't think about mortality, brothers. You know what I'm saying? I was. It's what a dynamic and a dichotomy for me.
100%. Sean? Thoughts on this?
Yeah. So, you mentioned that when someone's like, sad, or let's call it depressed, or at their lowest moment, whatever term someone wants to use, they're in the hurt locker. Whenever someone's there, you know what that is? That is not the story. That's just a freaking moment. And I think that most people get the language discombobulated. The moment ain't a story. It's a blip, barely on the radar. The story is the full radar screen, not the tiny little blip that is only there for a split second. Ping, gone. But people will take that ping and they will wrap their entire life around that ping.
So true.
It was here and gone. Here and freaking gone. And they'll cling to that ping, disappearing off into the acoustic history like it's a life preserver. The wrong kind of life preserver. They chose the wrong title to cling on to, and that is, I'm sad. I'm in the hurt locker, etc. It's a freaking moment. Let it rip by. Rearview mirror. Now, that's making it sound easy, of course. But it becomes really super hard moments when you don't get right with the idea that that ain't the story. The story is the freaking magnificent epic that Hollywood would talk about. That's the story. The movie of your life, the hero's journey, not the hero's blip.
Well said.
The hero's journey requires ebbs and flows. It requires a skinny little kid to try and drag a sword out of a rock and be surprised when he falls on his silly ass with the sword in his hand. Now what? That ain't the heroic moment. That's just the blip. It's what he does with it in the future. Because he could have left that sword and freaking ran off into the bushes and never seen it again. He could have tried to stick it back in the rock and pretend that it didn't happen, or he could have freaking owned it. And as the fable goes, as mythology goes, he freaking owned that sword and got his band of heroic knights wrapped around him. And when I was a kid growing up in England, like I used to go looking for the sword, man. I know it's ridiculous, but I did. I did. As a kid, I had an active imagination. I had a curious mind. I wanted to try to understand the world around me. And so I went looking for swords. And of course, I never found one as the mythology piece. But I found several swords throughout my life. I've drawn several swords out of rocks throughout my life. Now, that sounds like a big, bold claim until you just try to understand what the moment means. As King Arthur was drawing the sword out of the rock, it wasn't that he was finally understanding that he was a hero. He was finally understanding that he was now entering into a new journey called King Arthur. And we all have King Arthur moments throughout our lives if we understand the moment for what it is. And I think where it gets a bit twisted is these moments that show up in our lives. I believe that due to mythology and due to Harlequin romance novels and due to building out small stories into big stories, people expect a parade, confetti falling down as they find that rock and pull the sword out of the rock. They expect a celebration, some form of recognition where, if not others are recognizing that occurred, then at least it's the klaxon bell sounding off to you that says, this is a moment that you've got to pay attention to. Yeah. And without that, sometimes these things just slip by unannounced, unaware, unnoticed. But there's lots of swords in the rock moments in life. Life is designed to put them in front of us. You're designed to frickin' pull the thing out of the rock and do something with it.
There's a great question in this, is that there are many people out there in the world, and I know I was one of them at one point, that I would have walked right past it. I would have looked at that sword and been like, nope, not for me. And just off I went into the distance. But it wasn't until I realized that I had control over what it is that I wanted, what it is that I was going to do with my life. And it took a reminder for me. And I mean, in the hero's journey, there's the whole idea of having supernatural aid or a mentor or somebody coming and being like putting the challenge in front of you. And I mean, for me, it was my brother who called me from Korea and said, what are you waiting for? and I didn't have an answer. I had no other reason than just like I don't know what I'm waiting for. And then it was that day I was like, okay, I'm back into it. Let's back in the game. Good to go. And I went down to the recruiters the next day and started that whole hero's journey, right? But the question I want to ask you guys is like, looking back on your lives in terms of reflection now, to reconcile those moments to when you realized you walked right past it, like you had the opportunity, it was there, and you walked right past it. You knew it was there and you walked right past it. So to reconcile that with yourselves and be okay and move forward, how do you do that? Or what advice would you give to other people who are now struggling with the fact that they've walked right past that sword? Chad, I'm going to start with you this time so you don't have to follow Rudy.
Yeah, I mean, I think things kind of come full circle again, and I think when you're ready for them, they'll reapproach you in maybe a different manner or a different context or with a different individual, right? Like Sean said earlier, the blips for me just continue to compound. So that's who I thought I was. These blips, I'm like, nope, I'm just a loser. I'm just a bum. I can't hold space. But now, again, 4 years, I can literally stop and say, okay, like just recently, Mental Joe, we screwed up a collaboration we did with somebody. Our tracking wasn't dialed in. Like everything was just a mess. And that would have 5-6 years ago, that Chad would have quit and said, you know what? You're a loser. You're a bum. Look at this. You can't do this right. No, instead, now I'm like, what did I learn from the process? How do I clean it up? What safeguards can I build around this so this doesn't happen again? Right. So instead of a blip, now I take it as a learning lesson and realize that failure for me is a learning lesson. There is no punishment tied to it. Right. It's a learning lesson. To where previous Chad was, if you fail, there's punishment coming with that. And so I was scared to fail because I didn't want to get punished. So for me, it's these blips and blips and blips added up for so many years where now I can literally pause in a moment, zoom out and be like, okay, what can we learn from this opportunity? What can we learn from this introduction? Or like you said, what can we learn from something that's coming back around tenfold to us, but maybe in a different manner, and looking at that and slowing down a little bit, you know?
If you don't mind, I'd like to jump on that real quick. So, Chad, I think what you've described is kind of the hero's journey. And so let me clarify that. The hero's journey is a kind of thing. If you screw up the collab and then you learn the lesson and you fix it and you carry on, it's kind of a hero's journey, I think. Not really. I think the real hero's journey is you learn the lesson and then you let everyone around you know what the lesson is. Just like freaking King Arthur's fable. Like if King Arthur was banging around the countryside, pulling all the swords out of all the rocks, and then, big turkey, he's chewing on a big turkey leg 4 years later, no one's the wiser. No one knows how many swords got pulled out of rocks. No one knows that he, Sir Galahad and all of the crew. No one knows any of that unless the story is told, unless the fable is relayed, unless 27 villages over, they've heard about the fable of King Arthur. There's no power in it if the message isn't spread. And so if you learn some lesson from a collab, you can either fix it in your head and execute against it, or you can fix it in your head, execute against it, and then let everyone know how you are intending to do it better in the future. And so to me, no story is worth its salt unless it impacts someone else by explaining how you had to get salty to learn the lesson.
I like that. Rudy?
Yeah, brother. Well, that's what this, I think, is an incredible example of sharing the message, the boom, the treasure that we all receive from the arduous slaying of the Minotaur, and we get the treasure. We save the woman. We win the battle. We bring back the golden fleece, but we bring it back. It's absolutely an essential, an element of the hero's journey is bringing back the boom, bringing back the knowledge, because it's hard fought, it's earned. And I'm doing a show right now with Ronnie Atkins, my co-host. He's 35, still in the reserves, Intel Bubba, soldier. people, I work a lot with him, like even personally. We train, we spend time, and I see in this young man, he's a father, just had a baby last week, his third child. I see in this young man myself when I got into this nebulous entertainment business. I had no collective around for me during that time, and I failed miserably, is what I'm saying. I failed miserably, and there were quite a few pitfalls that would have been easily navigated if I would have had just a little bit of instruction, just a little hip pocket class. And I believe I'm excited about the Rudy Reyeses down the road. I'm really excited about them. I believe my mission now is to get the word, the knowledge, the golden fleece to the next generation, because brothers and sisters have been fighting since, past the times, past my time when I finally put down the gun, and there will be warriors fighting in the future too. I want to be a part of that transcendence in that hero's journey. So just as you said, Sean, that village is over, continents over are going to have that message. And that makes me feel good. It makes me feel good.
Absolutely. This is a beautiful part about within the hero's journey of within the whole story. The return, the ability to give a gift back to the community once you get back to the original state. But sometimes that gift is to yourself.
Oh yeah.
And it becomes an internal cycle as well as an external cycle. And that, Chad started at the beginning saying, hey, I want to be that person for my kids. It's that same concept of, I want to take the information that I've learned through my struggles and be able to spread it around. Now, the challenge then, I want to get your guys' thoughts on this, is that the difference between teaching the concepts, espousing, saying, well, everybody should go through the journey. You're going to have some turmoil. You're going to hit these pitfalls and you got to go through it, and then you'll learn, and then you'll be able to engage, so you can just talk about it, versus coaching someone through those difficulties when they're in those bad spots, and then kind of giving them a little shove that they need to get moving a little bit impetus. But it's a tough line, because then they're not going to really learn the lessons that you had to learn. So what do you think? How to address that line? I'm actually going to start with Sean. What do you think?
So it's a good question, and it's a tricky one, because there is no simple answer. And even if there was a simple answer, it would apply to 2 out of 10 people. And then the other 8 people need other answers. And that's just the way it is, man. There is no universal A plus B equals C on this one. And so I'm going to inject a little bit more complexity into your question, another variable that really muddies the water. And that is, as the example, if someone is on their, I'm going to create an avatar, someone who is 40 years old, and they are a male veteran. They've been out for a while. They are struggling, but they've turned their life around to some degree, and now they're kind of in the game. They've been in the game for 6 months, and they've learned a few things. They're quite excited, and they've seen the improvement from where they were 6 months ago, which was in the hurt locker, that little moment. Now they're on their hero's journey, but again, only 6 months into it, and now they're coming at it like they are a subject matter expert. And so 6 months of almost clarity, and now they're elucidating like they've been in the game for 30, 40, 1,000 years of wisdom. And so just like King Arthur draws the sword out of the rock, I want to believe in my mind's eye that he didn't run from the rock and run through every village waving that sword saying, look at me, I'm freaking King Arthur. I'm about to kick ass in 20 years. I want to believe that he didn't do that. At least that's the story that I tell myself in my head. And that's why I don't care for someone who has just seen a glimmer of an opening of clarity, and now they're preaching all the lessons that they've learned in that micro moment as if it's centuries of wisdom. It's a tricky thing, knowing when to talk too much, knowing when not to talk, knowing how to talk, why to talk, where to talk. It's tricky. And because everyone wants to help genuinely, sometimes the exuberance of wanting to be helpful wipes out the actual help, what little you might know to offer up. And so that's kind of what I'm focused on right now in this conversation, or what I'm looking for perspective in this conversation from Rudy, from Chad, from you, Chance, as to your thoughts on the need for it, but the incorrect balance in executing it.
That is definitely muddying the water. Rudy, what do you got?
Okay, something came to my mind. All right. When I was going through my selection and my very first helocast, right? And we were running H harnesses back then, and big rucks and H harnesses and boonie covers, and zip ties. You zip tie your kit, and my instructor mentioned 2 is 1, 1 is none. So whatever your attachment is, whether it's the alligator clip and the zip tie, or the zip tie and 550 cord, well, I thought the zip ties would hold, right? He gave me the lesson. I didn't exactly execute it. I had the alligator clips, but remember, they're all rusty. It's old world. It's old school. Chad, this is probably before your time, brother. So we're doing 20 and 20. Freaking 20 knots, 20 feet up. Boom! I throw out my rut with the tubular nylon. Got my fins. Oh, hit the water. I'm feeling amazing. My first time out of a bird into the water, right? First time. I'm from Missouri and Texas. There's no ocean there. So I I ascend properly, get to the freaking top, slipped on my fins. Freaking got my weapon out, pulling my ruck, and I'm starting to fin in. And as I'm finning, I see a med kit floating around there, and a canteen floating. I'm like, damn, somebody messed up out here. Her gear's all over the place. At my freaking H harness, and it's my freaking gear. So I had mentorship in a hip pocket class and good solid leadership, but it wasn't until I messed up on my own that I recognized the gravitas and importance. And it is a fine line. And I'm thinking also, Sean, I wonder if you're alluding to this. Okay, so my recon journey and my warrior journey is very sacred to me. And at the time, because I'd been fighting back to back to back and had brothers killed and brothers wounded, I look back now, I never went to a single funeral because I was still fighting. So back home, the wives and the community is going to the funerals. I'm still engaged. Everything about the honor of us representing our country, everything about the sacrifice that our families and our loved ones go through, worried about us. Every bit of what we experience, both the agony and the ecstasy of combat, is very sacred. And about 10 years ago, this long form of discussion really, I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know about podcasts, and I didn't have the access to this long form discussion then. And I was starting to see the first elements of veterans, in my observation, exploiting this sacred experience, either for profit or ego, or for both. I made a decision then to not speak about it and hold it close, and to focus on action. And I let that ride for about 8 years. And then that is when, through my new perspective of having some hardcore blips, finding myself in a mental institution for a year for veterans, and me freaking doing the program and getting out of there and being actually probably worse from this stupid freaking, this the cuckoo, freaking mental health. Man, I was worse coming out of there with a bunch of degenerates. I was in there with a bunch of degenerates, y'all. Then I said, Rudy, this is the time when you're going to start sharing. And I had to go through the fire. And I hear where you're coming from, Sean. I hear where you're coming from. There's a lot of subject matter expert gurus now, it seems. I think we ride the line. We stay authentic. We stay true. And the path will illuminate for us. That is what I believe.
100%. Chad, thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I probably tread on the other side of not wanting to talk enough about my experience, to be honest with you, because I don't look at myself as an expert in anything, right? Like, I am very early on in my mental health journey in Chad 2.0. And so when someone like a Sean talks, or other folks, like, I literally shut up and just listen to what they have to say, right? Because they are bringing something to the table that I never have had before. So for me, it's shut up, listen, soak it in, and level up. For me, is being a dad, and my oldest son right now is massively addicted to baseball. It is crazy, but it is so cool to see, because I'm not pushing the agenda. We play catch before the bus shows up every single morning. We throw every single night. We hit every single night, and it is all him wanting to do it. And I don't coach. I know enough to be deadly, right? To get him some fundamentals to move him forward in his baseball journey. But when we go to the batting cages, and there is a Puerto Rican gentleman there that used to play for the Florida Marlins that is teaching him how to hit, I shut up. I watch him. I watch how he's teaching Connor. So when we go home, I can duplicate that. So when he goes back to the batting cages, it's all the same. So for me, I really err on that side of caution, right? Because there is so many gurus out there and so many know-it-alls. And I've ran into a lot of them. And I'm like, you are arrogant, you are gross, and you don't know anything. But I keep my mouth shut. I try to. And I think that's where I struggle a lot, even talking about this stuff on social media and stuff, because that imposter syndrome is still there. It still resonates. I still hear the little voices on the other side of the mountain telling me I'm no good. I don't know anything. Now, the positive voices have gotten louder, right? That inner B is slowly going away. So, for me, I think I try to err on that side of, I don't know anything. I'm still learning, and I'm trying to gain as much information as possible to lead that right life.
I like that. And it's funny because I was that guy. I think Sean was describing this person, and I'm like, oh yeah, I think that was me about 4 years ago, 3-4 years ago, even up to and including when we first started the collective. Was I had all of these thoughts and all these ideas, and Sean and I actually talked about this the other day. Was the concept of, I had this desire to be heard. I went so long without feeling like I had been heard, and so to that point, I started realizing that through the collective, that I got people would listen to me more when I didn't speak for longer periods of time. And so to the point that I basically moderate these conversations, right? I pipe in every so often. I'm doing it more so today because I like being part of this conversation, but it's more about asking more questions than giving answers. And I want to get your guys' thoughts on this, because I was talking to a couple of friends of mine the other day, and we came into this. They asked me about the collective and what I liked about it. And I was like, I love the fact that we never actually come up with answers. We just have more questions by the end of it. We talk about this for hours, and we just have more questions, and we have more conversations, and it builds out this concept of knowledge into a question-driven understanding. And I now recognize, when Sean and I first started the collective, he used to ask me a lot of questions, and I would just have answers for him. And yeah, well, this and that and these things, right? But over time, what I came to understand was the fact that he was asking questions in order to better understand me, but I was not asking the questions to better understand me. And so now, this is a typical portion of coaching in general, is that it's not about telling someone how to do something. It's about asking them the questions until they can come up with the answer on their own. And this is just again, I'm just starting this whole concept. So I'm not trying to espouse that is the way it is. That's what I've come to understand in the last little while, is that the more questions I can ask, the better other people can understand the concept to their own intention. And I want to get your guys' thoughts on how that applies to yourself, how you've applied that understanding or that knowledge to help other generations or other veterans or other issues. John, what are you thinking? I saw you come up.
Yeah, so I just wanted to tweak your language, not on your behalf, but just from my perspective. And so you said that you were trying to, and I'm going to loosely frame it up as you were trying to be validated to some degree during the conversation. And I never really thought that. I thought you were just trying to be helpful. You just wanted to be helpful, like most dudes want to be. We just want to help, man. Like, and it's a flaw, at least amongst the guys that I know. Like in my own house, if I don't understand something, if my wife has a problem that she 100% knows how to solve, I'm in there messing it up, trying to be helpful. Because I'm a dude trying to help. I'm trying to fix the problem that I don't understand. And that is at the core of sometimes the hero's journey. You're in there trying to fix a problem that you absolutely don't understand at all, because you're trying to be helpful. You're trying to apply some heroic energy against a problem that you can't even spell. And sometimes it causes more trouble than it solves. And so how best to navigate that area? Well, Chance, you navigated it, but we all continue to navigate it. Like, no one ever gets it all the way right, and then it's just done. Oh, I guess I figured that part of life out. I'll never screw that part up again. It's an ebb and flow, man. The time that you think that you got it all figured out is the time that you're going to screw it up about a minute later and realize that you don't have it all figured out. Only if you keep an open mind can you understand that you're not that squared away. I try to be as squared away as I can be, but that doesn't mean I'm fully square. I've got some round edges on me for sure that I'm still trying to square up, but that'll be a lifelong journey. And I think that's the more important message. Rather than trying to hand out the answers, hand out the fact that you're trying to be helpful, but you don't have the answers. But not too many dudes, their egos just won't allow them to say that. It's hard to say, I don't have a freaking clue, bro, but together we'll figure it out. At least 50 or 60% we'll have done by the end of today. A confident man should be confident enough to let everyone know that he's not that confident.
That's a great point, Chad. Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, nail on head as always. But it's the whole mental Joe thing, right? A lot of people don't know, but behind the scenes stuff that Carrie and I do, but a lot of veterans reach out to us, right? Of like, hey, I'm in Virginia. Like, could you help me find a ketamine clinic? Or, hey, is there a psychedelic retreat that you recommend in Peru, right? So we get this on the daily. And the thing we'll always tell people is like, I can kind of tell you how I've healed myself and how I'm healing and how I'm leveling up and the reps I'm putting in. And I can guide you and I can give you information, but I can't physically put you through those reps. You have to do that. And so when we get people reaching out all the time, like, I just feel like for Mental Joe, one of the biggest things for us was, awareness and being a network of stuff and having enough people in our network, right? I'll call it that mycelium network if you want, that it reaches everybody. Like, hey, I don't have the answer to this, but I know someone that might have it. Let me connect you to that individual. Or, hey, I know XYZ over here. They might know about this individual treatment. I'm not the expert. Let me connect you. So again, I try to lead from that place because I don't want to overstep. I feel like I was that guy at the ego Chad before. Chad 1.0. I was the loudmouth. I knew it all. Oh, I know what I'm doing. I can shoot this pistol. No, I don't know what. I'd rather throw a pistol at the side of a barn, right? I would have much more accuracy than actually aiming and shooting the thing. So it's like I have some pipe hitters around me that can teach me that skill set. So what do I do now? I shut up, I pay attention, and I learn. But if I don't have the answer, man, I will get it for you, because we, like Sean and all of us have said today, and in the podcast, we're all on our own journey. But if we can help somebody by connecting them with somebody else, like that's where I think, the true identity of all of us coming together, the collective, where we grow.
Yeah, 100%. Rudy, any thoughts?
Well, that Knights of the Round Table, we were talking about Camelot and King Arthur and the finding the tribe, creating the tribe. Hi, family. Creating the tribe. How about you being a good tribe member first, right? Isn't that interesting? I mean, it's almost a Christ consciousness too, if you think about it this way or feel it this way. And Buddha. What about that through service, which means putting the ego in its proper place and being a great knight in service to Arthur? You become the Arthur. And there's no way I've witnessed that can be strategically created. Sometimes you guys see on like the Instagram and stuff like that, there's a ton of like wealth and self-development, teachers, gurus, coaches, what have you. There's some great knowledge. There's a few people that I listen to and I hear, and the ones that I really, really like actually don't talk about themselves. They talk about a struggle or a witness. They've witnessed something and it caused them to think and reflect and then observe the world. So when we become this, when we're that radio man, when we're that point man, when we're that ARTO, the toughest freaking job in a recon team, because you got all the radios and all the feed kit, all the antennas and extra batteries. If you can be a good assistant radio operator for community, you might one day turn around and notice the reflection in the mirrors. You become King Arthur. And then you go right back to carrying the radio. That's the way I see it.
That is a great point. It made me think of the fact that each person, we are all our own, as we've been saying, we're all on our own hero's journey, right? But the key point of this is that even within the team, we are our own heroes within the team. And I think it was, I was listening to one of the early Jocko podcasts, and he was talking about this, and he was saying that, everyone is the most important person in the platoon.
Well said.
And it's just like, yeah, the machine gunner is the most important person on the team when the machine gunner is needed. What the point man is the most important person on the team when the point man is needed. The radio man, the blah 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 blah. And I think that our ego sometimes gets in the way of this and purports that to be the most important part of the team, you need to be the most important part of the team all the time, right? It's always you. And so every answer, everything has to come through you rather than just being there to support. Because as I said at the beginning, the team is kind of an ephemeral concept. It's not a physical thing. You can't point to where the team is, right? It's all of us agreeing to work together to our best ability to finish the objective, to complete the objective, to do whatever it is. But like, for instance, the collective as a whole, Sean and I are a team. Can you point to where the team is? Where does that line? It's all Sean right there. But to the point of like, we work together. I do a certain portion of the work. Sean does a certain portion of the work, but they're not the same work, right? He doesn't do any of the clips. He doesn't do any of the scheduling. He doesn't do any of that stuff, but I do. And it works together because neither of us inject ourselves into those other situations.
So you're Sean's admin then?
Yeah, and I'm okay with that.
He's my brain, is what he is. I'm just the body limping around.
Man, I wish I could be at that kind of level. I'm Sean's brain. I'm like, all right, that'd be a good spot to hang out. But I want to ask you guys this question because this is, I think, something that a lot of us struggle with, especially coming out of the military and especially coming out of any sort of thing where you're indoctrinated into it. So, police, first responders, all kind of have the same thing. Tanya hit a question, more of a statement on this, but I want to bring it up because this is exactly what I want to talk about. So, Tanya says, OPSEC notwithstanding, it's interesting how so many veterans refrain from talking, thus sharing the elixir, especially of painful experiences that change them on the inside. And I get it. It's not fun revisiting those things. But I want to ask you guys, what has the experience been for you when you started sharing those experiences, when you started developing those, and how has that transformed who you are now by doing so? Chad, coming to you first.
Yeah, again, we'll go back to 4 years when Chad 2.0 started, right? For me, I had a lot of embarrassment, growing up in, a traumatized childhood, which a lot of us, like my dad, again, abusive alcoholic. My mom worked 4 or 5 jobs. She wasn't there. She was all over the place. I'm a latchkey kid, enter the military, want to be a pipe hitter. I'm at Ranger Battalion, make a really bad decision at the age of 19, and I get kicked out. But the hazing and the everything, like Rudy said it earlier, civilians, here I am, part of special operations, and now I'm just this grunt leg, right? And we all know how that is talked about in the culture. So I'm sitting here thinking, okay, this is it. I'm done. I'm a loser. I'm a leg. I can't do anything else with this. I'm going to sit on this. And it beat me up for 20 plus years. And if I would have realized to just talk about that and realize how many other guys and gals have that expectation of being something different, whether it's their military career or their, professional career, and they have letdowns, like if I could have just talked about it sooner, I could have healed sooner. I could have been in a much further place than I am today. But then I pause, I zoom out. I'm like, well, that's not part of the story. I've got to go through these different chapters to get where I'm at today. So it's, again, it's pausing, it's zooming out and realizing that the things that happened to me, they happen for a reason. And now I'm in a place where I feel like I can talk about them, and it's okay to share those things, because now that I realize that I have shared, I realize how similar my story is to someone else's that's helping them level up.
Love that. Rudy, thoughts?
Absolutely, Chad, you nailed it. I was very fortunate that I had a lifetime of discipline when I got into the Marine Corps. And then when given the opportunity after having a really hard first year, because no good deed goes unpunished in the Marine Corps. So I had the hardest duty, guard duty, and I was always in charge of all the sick, lame, and crazies and the Marines running for the border. And so I'd have to go get, this is the 90s. I had to go, be escorted with a security team to get the Marines that went UA in Tijuana. I lived in the squad bay. I PT'd in the squad bay. I rarely saw the sun unless I was going to go get somebody UA. And I had to have a ridiculous jarhead haircut. And I said, well, Rudy Reyes, this is what you signed up for, I guess. And, not so glorious and badass as you thought. And because I excelled at everything, I had an opportunity to try out for recon. Changed my life. When I got to the unit after selection and all the schoolings, I embraced it, and I had the discipline to never get in trouble. I did not drink alcohol. That saves you from a lot in the military as far as pitfalls of getting into trouble. So it's so interesting now, 25, 28 years later, so many young people that become fans of mine through whether it's the Generation Kill or TV or the video games or my work like this that we're doing. When they reach out, and I get a million of them, right? I always tell them, listen, embrace the discipline and do not get in trouble out in town. If you can just not get into trouble out in town, if you can just be mindful about the alcohol, and you can make it to 21, you can go into any area of special operations you want to. But those first few years are going to be the toughest because military life sucks in the beginning. And if you know that, prepare yourself for it. If you're prepared, you just got a shot to be any kind of hero you want to be. That's what I'm taking from Chad. Does that ring true to you, Chad?
Yeah, I mean, very much so. It's, it's why I hold the tip of the spear guys at such regard, right? It's why, like, when a Jocko or again, you guys are speaking, right? I listen, right? Because I didn't realize I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have any heroes growing up. I went in thinking, okay, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna put my head down and work hard. That's all I knew. I knew if I worked hard, I'd get somewhere, someplace. But somewhere along the line, the work hard ethic, the grinding, the metal, right? It finally wore off and the wheels fell off along with pain pills and alcohol and everything else. But if I had at least a mentor or someone to look up to, maybe I would have had a different outlook. So that's why I love when I'm hearing more and more of the top tiered veterans really speak out about their struggles, because it's giving the average Joe like myself some hope and some clarity to look at things from a different lens.
Love that. Sean, thoughts?
You're not going to have to provide an answer, but I am going to throw out a question that you can answer in your mind. So you don't have to give an audible answer. Anyone doesn't have to give it. So the question is this. Just thinking about two movies, The Lord of the Rings and The Matrix. What character would you be in each movie? Again, I'm not going to ask you to say that out loud. I'll give you my answer, and I'll make my point. So in Lord of the Rings, I'm freaking Aragorn. I mean, I'm going to kick that ass all day long. Guaranteed. Maybe throw in a little sprinkle of Gandalf, but I'm Aragorn all the way. And then for The Matrix, of course, I'm going to be Neo. That's what I have in my mind. That's the part I'm going to play. I mean, Morpheus is cool, the whole thing. Every character in those two movies has a part to play. So now to my point. When I was a young man reading The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings in England, I mean, that's kind of what I was raised on. Mythology, fable, science fiction, Lord of the Rings. Frickin' Tolkien, man. Throw in a little bit of Shakespeare, get my freak on. But that's kind of how I raised myself, was through the mythology of the prancing pony, as it were. The characters in the tavern. I'd never been in I wasn't a character in any movie when I was reading that book, but I was a character in the book. And so when I started growing up, I realized that I can be a character in my life. What character would I be? And do you know what I didn't say to myself? I want to be the bartender in the prancing pony. That'd be cool. That'd be large and in charge. That's what I want to grow up to be. I never thought that. I always took a leading part in the movie, in the novel, in the thing. As I read 500-page novels, I didn't focus on the dude who was in chapter 2 for 2 sentences. That was not me. I wasn't him. I wanted to be the guy. Maybe not the guy, but one of the guys in the plot that made a difference. And I think for a lot of folks out there, they've lost sight of what they want to be. Do you want to be the freaking bartender in the prancing pony, mopping the floor every night and no one ever knows about it? Or do you want to be out there large and in charge, kicking ass and inspiring people? I was inspired by Aragorn in a freaking fantasy book to be it. And so now imagine the power of that actually being a thing, a real person, a human being who is freaking heroic. I think it's important to have real heroes in life. And it's our job to establish who those people are in our lives. As I said, I didn't have a hero until I joined the military. And then I started identifying them on my own hero's journey. The heroes that you collect as you walk the warrior way. The heroes that you meet for only a minute at a bus stop that will change your life. You never know their name. But it's your job out there to aspire to be a leading character in your own movie and then figure out how to achieve that by looking for people who've already lived that life. If The Lord of the Rings is 3 books and you've read the first 2 books and you haven't come up with who you would be in the novel, well, the third and last book is not the time to be thinking about that because you're heading for Mount Doom at that point. That is not the time to think, geez, I think I'll be the horse in this novel. You got to figure this stuff out as fast as you can. Now, to my final point. Something that I realized some time ago, I won't put a date on it. It's not recent, but it's not a long time ago. It's so freaking simplistic. It's stupid how simple this is gonna sound. But at 60, I know this to be true now. You don't have any time left to figure this part out. You just don't have any time left. The moment that you latch onto this idea that you have to get with the program and start freaking living your best life right now, not tomorrow. Yesterday's already gone. Forget about all that nonsense of what happened in the past. For Rudy as the example, if he had some screw ups in his past, freaking forget about it. That's gone. Rudy is who Rudy is right now. Rudy's cool as hell right now. If Rudy was a jerk 7 years ago, whatever, man, I don't care. It's who's in front of me, not who's behind me. And so it's all of our jobs to understand that start being cool today, not tomorrow. There is no freaking tomorrow. You'll be dead tomorrow before you know it. So get in the game now. Don't wait another second to be a hero.
100%. Rudy, any thoughts on this?
Right on, brother. That's it, brother. You know what's man? When we're all talking, every time any of you brothers are talking, it gives me a little memory or a little insight or reflect. I remember, I was an infantryman. I forgot. Well, maybe why the corporal of the guard, when recon came through, he gave him my name and coordinated so at 4 a.m. I could go do the NDOC. Why he did that? I forgot all about this. Because I was a hero in my own story my whole life, right? Right, brother? Because, I read comic books and I read the Dune freaking sagas and Lord of the Rings. So even though I was living in purgatory Lance Corporal hell in the Marine Corps, every day on that squad bay, I did 2 hours of Kung Fu. Every day I worked my technique. Every day I did an hour of calisthenics. I didn't care what was going on, and I didn't care if it had to be done at 2 a.m. because the guard watches. I forgot. Yes, it's because I never thought I was a secondary person in my life, like that life was happening to me. I was happening to life. And so that must have been a catalyst. Maybe that's, So anyone out here listening to this, listening up to Sean, seize the moment. And the moment's now. And listen to the 60-year-old and the 52-year-old. Holy smokes, it goes by fast. So you better get on board now. That's all I got.
Absolutely. Chad, thoughts?
I don't know the name, but I think I'm the dwarf that's got the big beard and the battle axes, man.
Gimli.
Like, I know I'm not the lead character, but
Good
I
job,
am the
Gimli.
guy. Yeah, there we go. But I am the guy you can count on. Like, oh, this isn't going to end well, but all right, let's get after it. Oh, well, here we go. So, I mean, from that standpoint, plus he's got a cool beard and he carries battle axes, and he's short and strong as hell. So I'm going to take that one. But yeah, it's, I think everyone, like you said, the hero's journey, but you also got to realize where you're at and where your skill set is too.
That's a great point. And to this, I'm going to add on a little bit is that I wrote down earlier a bit part in another story. So, Sean, you mentioned the barkeep at the Prancing Pony, and he has a very small part within the main story, the whole arc of the story. Or you think about like Tom Bombadil or Gimli or whoever you want to, whatever story you want to look at. There's always bit parts within the larger story, and I think that we forget sometimes that those bit parts have stories of their own.
Sure.
Right? They have their own processes. They have their own backstories. They've done all the things. I mean, if you read Lord of the Rings or you read just The Hobbit, you know, the hero is Bilbo. He's the hero of the story. He goes through the whole thing, blah, blah, blah. But all of the dwarves have their own stories if you read the Silmarillion, if you read all the backs, if you do. So each one of those things, we all have our heroes.
For sure.
But we come together to create a larger hero's journey. And I think that this is something that we all are trying to espouse, we're trying to get across, is the fact that, you know, we have our path. And I think Sean and I talked about this another point in time, was his path and my path are parallel to each other right now. We are working together towards a specific goal, and we are smashing that out of the park with, you know, as he said, 400 plus podcasts. This is number 390 of the collective, and all the gold mines and all the other ones that we've done and all this other stuff, we have the experience. But that development of that experience was not easy. And there were a number of times that Sean and I wanted to probably throttle each other, but we still recognize that neither one of us is the hero in each other's story. And I think this is where the crux of it is that, Chad, you mentioned earlier, you put, you know, soft guys on a pedestal. To a degree, this could be looked at as, you know, you're making them the hero of your story. But they're not. They're bit parts in your hero's journey. And there was a point when I first got into, you know, veteran advocacy that I was looking around the veteran space, and I was wandering around going like, why is no one bringing us together? Why is no one solving any of these problems? What is going on? And I expected this paragon, this Aragon-like figure to come down from the hill and be like, all right, boys, follow me. And we'd all just, okay, cool. Off we'd go with that person, until I realized that person didn't exist. And it was up, if I saw an issue, that it was up to me to fix. And then I just started getting to work from there. And I failed a whole bunch of times. I tripped over my own feet, and I tripped over my own words. And I did all of the things, to the point now where I get to sit and ask questions from awesome people like you guys. And I think this is something that we need to maybe espouse more within the veteran community of, it's not up to anybody else. It's not up to Rudy doing all his shows and doing all the cool things that he's going to solve the problems. No, it's not up to Chad to solve all the problems either, or Sean or I. It's up to us to ask the questions until somebody goes, well, nobody else is doing it, so here I go. And I want to get your guys' thoughts on that. What do you think, Chad? I'm coming to you first.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was, you know, again, starting the mental Joe thing, right? Bringing awareness to, you know, non-traditional modalities. And I kind of looked at it as, you know, if not anybody else, well, then why not me? Well, you know, why can't I go after this? Why can't I be a voice for this? Why can't I bring recognition to this? Because again, as the average Joe, I just felt like there was not a lot in this space, right? Like there's a lot of retreats, but they really focus on the soft element, right? They don't really focus on the average grunt that's been through some stuff, but is cast aside because it doesn't have all these bells and whistles attached to it, right? So that's where I was like, okay, like I have to stand up for this. I've got to be some kind of voice, and whether people agree with it, gravitate toward it, or whatnot, I still have to put that foot forward to see where we're going with this thing. So, you know, as we can continue to do so, it's a lot of the average Joes, like I said, that'll reach out on that daily basis to us and say, hey, I need some help. Hey, I am in the hurt locker. Hey, I am going through this period. And so us holding that space, you know, for allowing those conversations, I feel is why we did this. So, you know, again, if not me, who? So, you know, pick the sword out of the rock, and it's you, Chad. You picked it. Go. You got to figure this out, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Sean, thoughts on this?
So I'd use the bartender at the Prancing Pony for a particular reason, because, you know, I think we've all had our fair share of bartender moments. And some of the best advice I've ever got in life is 30 seconds with a good bartender. Do you know why? Because a bartender sees a lot of people, talks to a lot of people, listens to a lot of people. A bartender sees more of humanity than a lot of people. And so a good bartender is a good person with a pile of good knowledge if you understand how to communicate with them. If you know how to pull a sword out of a rock, then you know how to pull a conversation out of a dude. The dude is the rock, the sword is the wisdom. And it's your job to learn how to pull the sword out of the rock with each person who's standing in front of you. Straight up. That's what I believe. Now, it's a weird analogy. Might not work for everyone, but that's what I've been trying to do for a long time. Is King Arthur the person in front of me? And so the prancing pony bartender, in the 60 seconds in the book that he gets to portray, it might have been the moment that shifted the journey in the right direction. So I don't want to minimize a 12-second, a 27-long-second conversation with some rando on a sidewalk. I literally stated that at bus stops, a 1-minute conversation at a bus stop can change your life or change the other person's life. The rock, the sword, it's your job to figure that moment out.
Absolutely. Rudy, thoughts?
How about this as far as casting? As far as casting, and to your point, Chance, sometimes it may be perceived that you're a supplementary character, or you're one of the knights, around the table. You may even be a squire to one of those knights. When you think of the film Star Wars, these specifically Star Wars and that universe, how about Sean's old enough probably to have seen Star Wars at the theater. I saw it at the theater. I think I was 5 years old. And as a 5-year-old, Luke Skywalker was the hero. As a 5-year-old, I didn't really appreciate the smart aleck, rakish Harrison Ford as Han Solo. As a 5-year-old, I knew evil incarnate was Darth Vader. As a 5-year-old, I knew the wise old man was Obi-Wan. As things progress, holy smokes, each one of those characters has had a dark side, has been heroic and brave, has sacrificed. So just because in one picture the cast is set up the way it is, doesn't mean that, to your point earlier, each and every one of those warriors, those castmates, every one of them has had their own warrior path, their own hero's journey. And think about in the second film, Empire Strikes Back, you get 13 seconds to look at Boba Fett. 13, 15 seconds. Boom, captures your mind. I'm like, man, who is this Boba Fett? And now universes and universes have been made about Boba Fett and the clones. And as well as seeing Obi-Wan, the young Jedi warrior, taking on Anakin. So it's just a perspective. Are you the lead? Are you the supporting? Are you an extra? Don't get down if you're an extra, because like Boba Fett with no lines, you could have a whole series about you, baby, down the road. Do you hear where I'm coming from?
100%. And you're going down the right path, because I'm a huge Star Wars nerd. So I'm just going to say, no disintegrations. That is the key line in that whole 12 seconds of Boba Fett being engaged in that movie. And to that point, just somebody else pointing out this guy's a badass makes that character. Doesn't need to say anything. Doesn't need to be there. He's just in the lineup. He could just be one of the other bounty hunters in the line. But the fact that, as you said, evil incarnate, Darth Vader, points it out, no disintegrations. I think that's a key point to bring up, and I'm glad you brought it, or at least I'm glad I thought about it when you brought up Boba Fett. But is that that's all it takes. To Sean's point, it can take a throwaway line to a dude at a bus stop that will change their trajectory completely. I remember at one point in time I had a random sit-down conversation with somebody who was on the stairs beside a bridge that I didn't think about. I didn't think it was a big deal. I just saw him sit down there, and I was like, "Hey, man, you doing all right?" And he said, "No, I'm thinking about throwing myself off that bridge." Just that question. I could have walked right past him and never thought about it again. But to, again, Sean's point, what he's saying is those are those moments. You can pull the sword out, or you can keep walking. You can look at that as a challenge, or look at that as an ability to, this is my moment. This is this is Gimli on the walls of Moria, or in the mines of Moria, sitting there with the axe, like, let's go, bring it on. Or you could be one of those trying to run away, trying to get away. Like, and I think that's a critical part of the hero's journey within ourselves, is accepting those moments and leaning into them a little bit. So I want to ask you guys, were there points in time in your lives where you recognize the moment? Yes, this is one of those times. I'm going to pull the sword out of the stone here. And then leaned into it and either completely kiboshed the whole thing or perhaps gave somebody else the opportunity to take that moment. Sean, I'm going to start with you. What do you think?
I'll take your question and combine it into a single example. And so a couple of years ago, I started this hero's journey, the one that we're in right now, called podcasting. And so, of course, lots of people are hassling me. And I mean, freaking hassling me, man, like really irritating, hassling me to jump in front of a microphone. And I've told this story before. There's no way I was going to jump in front of a microphone. I'll never get in front of a stupid microphone, is what I said. And so, how did I end up in front of the microphone? Well, it was that I didn't want to enter into the void, but then I'll call them mentors, but they're not my mentors. They're just my pals, my buddies, my brohemages. Even though they'd been chirping at me to do this, and I kept saying easily, forget about it, I ain't doing it. It was just a couple of people with just a couple of key phrases that made me flippity flop my script. One of them is a dude called Tim Turner, and all he simply said to me on a phone call was, chirp, 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 you got to do this. And I kept saying, no, no, no. And then he said, are you aware of what the statistics are on suicides and mental health in veterans, first responders, law enforcement, and actively serving? And I said, no. And he said, well, just do me a favor. Take the next 24 hours to take a look at that. And then I was screwed. Then I was on my new hero's journey. Because the moment that you see something like that, you can't unsee it. Now, some people can, but I couldn't. And so the moment that I saw the stats and realized how my life had just changed because of that, I was not happy at all. But I made the big diversions to come and do this podcasting thing. And in order to do that, I had to give away my 15-year-old coaching company. Like, it was a double down bad in my books. I'm giving up the thing that I'm really good at and that I enjoy, changing the world, changing athletes. Now I'm going to go do something that I absolutely don't want to do, which is, I'm told, going to be good, but I just don't see it. And so the hero's journey isn't like full of fanfare and confetti and celebratory moments. There'll be a time for that maybe in the future, maybe not. But you've got to act in the absence of a spotlight to be a true hero. If you're being presented on a stage as a hero before you've done anything heroic, you're on the wrong freaking hero's journey. It's in the shadows. It's an absence of fanfare. It's an absence of a pat on the back. Typically, it just comes as a request. Like I got, dude, you got to do better. Okay, I'll look into it. Bam, now I'm trying to do better. And so don't get your hero's journey twisted. It could start off as an almost insignificant phone call at that point that will completely change the trajectory of your life for the good, as long as you're applying the righteous trajectory.
Absolutely. Rudy, thoughts on this one?
Wow, I just love these conversations because they, again, like little lightning bolts, bring things to mind. If you all don't know, we talked about it last time, but Chad, I created my own organization, Force Blue, that combines Marine Special Operations, actually Special Operations combat divers around the world. We've got pararescue, we've got Royal Marine Commandos, we've got SEALs, Recon, we've got SAS, and I repurpose our skills to rebuild coral reefs and do ocean conservation, a mission that needs us, a purpose that needs skilled cats that thrive in challenge. I'm finding the lives that I've impacted, so we now train the children of the fallen, Gold Store families, and get them into ocean conservation. We now have a scholarship for them as well. I started this 7 years ago. I had no work going on. Nobody knew it was happening. I did it because I had just come out of that mental institution, and I went right back to cocaine. Went right back to walking the streets alone. Went right back to dark places. Life was in shambles inside. So a good brother of mine saw me on the streets of New York City. He said, Rudy, I've got a dive trip. My daughter's graduating high school, and we're going to do a father-daughter dive trip down to Cayman Islands. He could tell I was really underweight. I was really hollow, Do you want to go? Brother, do you want to go? Like, oh, dog, I don't have any money. I had to pawn all my freaking dive kit anyway. I don't have anything. I can't do it. Thank you, though. Took it upon himself. Called the cat that runs the dive shop and the resort, who's a Coast Guard rescue swimmer. He raises up a little money. He flies me out there with him and his daughter. And in that week in Cayman Islands, seeing all the beautiful animals, being in the ocean, seeing the beautiful animals, and I'm not pushing a big ruck with weapon, and when I hit the beach, prepared to kill who's up there. Instead, I'm just surrounded by this God's majesty of beauty, and where every creature knows where it's supposed to be, and it's still got to hunt, it's still got to kill, but it also all it wants to do is make children for the future, and everybody knows where they belong. So after a few days, we're at the bar having some rum, and my brothers there, Keith Somm and Jim Ritteroff, said, man, Rudy, I'm so glad we got you down here because, first of all, you've come back to life. You've come back to life. I got clean. And then they told me, well, and these reefs are going away. The impact of cruise liners, the impact of building harbors for trade, the anchors are destroying all of this, and it may not be here for much longer. Boom, right there. I said, all right, I'm going to do something about it. I got to figure something out. We got to do something about this because I believe the parallel of innocent beings and creatures and animals. Innocence represented some of the innocence that I'd lost, represented some of the innocence that I never had as a child, represented some of the children that I tried to look after in Iraq, and ultimately were killed. It represented something truthful. And so I didn't know how I was going to do it, but we were going to do something. It was a slog, 3-year slog. Got my teammates together from all branches. We got scientists together. And we were barely making it. Nobody knew we existed except me driving with my teammates, my loved ones. And then somehow we got on the NFL's radar. Boom, tipping point. I will tell you what Force Blue has done for the world, for the kids, for us, and our children too, is far more powerful than the heaviest op and the most freaking hardcore clandestine insertion I've ever done in my life. So that's something special for me. People don't even really know about this except that in the inner circle. But that to me is the most important thing I've done to this point in my life. And it does not involve weapons. It does not. I'm not destroying targets. I also don't wear my stack of medals or my jump and dive. Doesn't have any of those trappings. But it's the most important hero's work that I'm blessed to be a part of, up to date.
Love that. Chad? Excuse me. Chad, any thoughts?
You might have to rephrase the I was just sitting there soaking it in, man. So if you want something from me, I probably need a rephrase of the question.
I think I might have to remember the question now. That's a real challenge. Well, we can move on. That's cool because I don't actually remember the question. That's all right. Rudy and Sean nailed it, so I don't even know where to go with this.
I'd like to just jump in on what Rudy said because it's quite a powerful thing that he said, and perhaps some people might not have picked up what he was putting down. So I'm gonna put down what I picked up, and it's this. You know, there's a lot of people out there that struggle. And there's people that do something about it, and there's people who don't do something about it. And Rudy was put in a position through the help of others. But then Rudy did something about it. He had a poetic moment. Like there was poetry in how he just described that. It was a phoenix arising from the ashes through the poetic lens of his realization of how the world surrounding him actually works. And so we can distort how the world works through the lens of our past. But as Rudy described that, like I was actually painting a mind's eye picture of what he was going through, and it was poetic. And so, it was powerful, I would say, what you just laid down there, Rudy. And it struck me as powerful, and it should strike others as powerful. And so why is it that you could have that powerful moment, but then not as many people are experiencing it as they should? And I really feel that perhaps you were open to the moment, in the now, in that present moment, you were present. And maybe it struck you like a lightning bolt. Maybe it occurred over a few minutes. I don't know. I'm kind of curious. Maybe you can clarify that up in a sec. But it's our job in our journey, whether we're standing on the start line or we're 3/4 of the way down the path, it's our job to pay attention to the signals that the planet is sending us, the world is sending us, the universe is sending us. Our friends are sending us. We're supposed to pay attention to these moments, not just let life slide by, and never be afraid, as Rudy wasn't, obviously. Never be afraid to sink your teeth into that poetic moment. And here we are. Now there's an initiative that I was not very well aware of that is out there kicking ass in the world right now, but not with Rudy's name on it. It's with the names of the men who flew him down there on it. It's with the names of the beach that he stood there and looked at the planet on it. It's the experience that's on that agency that is now out there kicking ass. Rudy's a tiny piece of it. But the inception moment occurred when other heroes stepped into Rudy's heroic life and turned him into a heroic opportunity. Now, you'll never be a hero unless you pick up what someone's putting down and then action it. And so these branching points are in front of us all the freaking time. We're all surrounded by good people. We're supposed to pick up what they put down, and then we're supposed to do something with it, just as Rudy did. So That's what I heard. That's what I thought. Now, my question to you, Rudy, is when you were standing on that beach doing 360s, figuring it all out, did it hit you like a lightning bolt? Did it take an afternoon? How did that play out for you? I'm curious.
Something about the ocean and that I'm able to see and that I'm breathing deep. This is the first time I've really ever scuba dived. I'm always using rebreathers and it's always mission. And it's always in dark, cold, nighttime waters. My script was flippity flopped. I'm in the daytime with other diving aficionados and tourists who absolutely are in a love relationship with the water. Everything about this experience, going out on the boat and then going to depth and going through the wrecks and looking at these beautiful animals. Something about innocence was there. And when I heard that this is going away, I said, then I must do my part. I didn't know what I was going to do. To be direct with you all, if you know my crazy ass, my first thing I thought is, well, maybe I can do some fucking demolitions to like these ships when they're in the harbor. Right? Right? But then I talked to Jim, and Jim's eyes are like this because he's a civilian, right? And then Keith Psalm, my Coast Guard rescue service, he's like, it'll be hard to get funding for that, but we do have connections for limpid mines. And Jim said, could you think of something else? And I said, well, I don't know. Then we got to do something. I don't know what we're going to do. And right there, we just started putting our heads together. And we called the most famous marine scientists. We called conservationists. We started trying to raise money. And here I thought that the most important military mission of my life is this. If this is not for the good, if this is not to fight for those who cannot fight for themselves, and that's why I joined the Marine Corps. It was Kosovo, and I saw ethnic cleansing, and there was children that were being killed by snipers, and there were civilians that were caught in the crossfire. And I joined the Marine Corps so I could fight for those that couldn't fight for themselves. Well, there was my new mission right here, these animals, these beings, and the joy that we get by being there. And we fumbled our way forward. And I got a team from all branches, and everyone chipped in for nothing. We have no money. We don't have any money. And I thought, why did I affect trillions of dollars worth of foreign policy and have billions of dollars for my weapons, and my close air support costs about, $100,000 every minute just in jet fuel. And how did all that out there? Why did that support me? But here I am fighting the ultimate fight, which is to protect those that can't protect themselves, that has no politics, has no nationality. It's for the world. And nobody was interested. Somehow I didn't give up. Maybe that's something that you all, the audience, needs to listen. I didn't give up. I knew this was my life's work. And then 3 years later, we hit a tipping point. And we've been growing exponentially. I went to Washington, D.C. over 2 years, changed legislature. So Chad, you can take your voc rehab, any veteran of any force, of any time period, either warfare or no warfare, voc rehab money that is your veteran, your benefit. You get your advanced open water scuba, and then you come to us and you do on-the-job training. And you know what we do every day? PT in the morning, mission prep, plan the dive the plan, debrief, talk mess to each other because somebody's buoyancy is messed up, right? They're freaking flapping around, whatever. And we're back in the squad bay again. We're back together again. Oh my gosh, it's been so transformational for me and my brothers. When you guys have a chance to check it out, forceblueteam.org, and you see these brothers and sisters on the team, we now have 70 teammates. We started with 5, and it's only going to continue to grow. But I took charge, Sean. I took charge as soon as I had the feeling. I did something. I said something, and did not let go of it. Once I got a hold of that thing in my mouth, I wasn't letting go of it. And here we are.
I love that. I think this is it goes to everything we've been saying today, is that you embrace the journey once it was shown to you. And I'm going to, there we go. So I just want to run through this. And I'm for those that don't know the hero's journey, we've been talking about it for almost 2 hours now, but I'm gonna work through this, through everyone's stories here, so that we can all talk about this. So you start in the ordinary world. You meet your heroes. You engage in the story as to what is right now. And for you, in that moment, at the beginning, you're in a already pretty negative spot, but that is your normal, right? If you're talking prior to engaging in this, it is just, that's the normal. That is whatever it is. So it doesn't have to be that the world is fantastic and everything's great. And no. Whatever the normal is, that's the beginning of the story. The call to adventure is when your friend, your brother, came up to you and said, "Hey man, let's go diving." And it's something as simple as that, right? It's just dive. There's the refusal of the call, which you specifically did. No, I don't have any of my stuff. There's no way I could. I don't have any money, so on and so forth. Meeting of the mentor, right? That is you. In that particular story, it is it's the ocean. That is your mentor. That is the thing that taught you, said, "Hey man, you need to do this. This is now your journey." Cross the threshold. You decided, I'm into this. Okay, let's fix it. I'm going to take the job. I'm down. How do we fix this problem? And I just want to state, from a like-minded person, I love the fact that the first thought is, how can I blow stuff up while being out here? That's me too. I had the same thing. You cross the first threshold, right? You start the work. You have tests. You meet allies. You have enemies. You're going to be fighting legislation. You're going to be fighting multinational corporations. You're going to be doing all these things. You're going to be meeting new cool people. All these things happen. You then approach the innermost cave, right? That is, you're getting close to what you want. And then there is the major ordeal. The major ordeal being, you just need to get through this one spot. Chad and I were talking about this ahead of time, where before you guys jumped in, we were saying, I feel like the collective is one good reel or one good show from exploding into the internet, right? And having thousands of thoughts, do all the stuff, right? Chad's saying the same thing. It's going to be one collab or one shirt. It's just going to bang, skyrocket. But the ordeal is dealing with the fact that it seems to be always the next. It's always the next person you talk to. It's always the next reel I got to put out. It's always the next thing that we got to do. And that's the hardest part, is because it's only hope that survives. Then there's the reward. That is your moment that the NFL took notice that, hey man, these guys are doing good work. That gives you the ability to start working back to normal. That's, you start making that your new normal. And that's the resurrection. That is the return to the Shire, right? That's where you get back to being who you are at a core level. You get to be the warrior again for another thing. And then you return with the elixir, which is you're now bringing it to the world. You're sitting here on this podcast saying, hey man, check out this website that, we're of this organization that does great work, that does all these things, that develops these things. Chad, I could do the exact same thing through your story with Mental Joe. We could do the exact same thing with the collective. We could do it 100 times over throughout our lives. And I wanted to really clarify that, because I think it's so important that we all understand that it is one giant story of our lives, the hero's journey, but it is many little hero's journeys throughout those lives that play into it. So I just wanted to put that out. Any thoughts on that? And then afterwards, I think we'll probably do some final thoughts. But in general, Chad, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, so many different things resonate, right? Like I told you earlier before we jumped on, I wanted to quit the whole mental Joe thing. I'm getting beat up, man. I'm tired. Like I know the goal, I know what we're trying to do, I know what we're trying to accomplish, but it's like getting that one person that's willing to shout you out, right, with that T-shirt on, or say, "Hey, go over here," right? Because again, being a 46-year-old man trying to figure out this social media algorithm stuff, I'm like, what is going on here, man? Can we just shake hands and kiss babies? I do that a lot better, you know? But yeah, being in this fight constantly and getting some, again, when I was saying, I just wanted to quit. But immediately when that happens, like I get these little nods from universe or whatever you want to call it. Like a veteran will call me, or someone will text me and say, "Hey, dude, I'm proud of you for what you're doing." Or, "Hey, there was a moment, Chance and Sean, probably about a year ago when we're on a podcast, and I think Sean said something to the effect of, like, 'Hey, Chad, I see you leveling up, and it's pretty cool to see.'" So like getting those nods, like, okay, I'm on the right path. I just got to continue to put these reps in, right? Like there's going to be those valleys where I need to pause, give grace, look at what's going on, and realize to continue push forward. And so those nods for me, again, come down to, having conversations like this, or having a veteran reach out to me and said, "Hey, dude, like I went through a ketamine session. Hey, I went to Mexico and had a, whatever ceremony, and holy cow, I'm a completely different person, and everything's about love now. And I want to push this forward as well." So those are the nods throughout the journey that kind of keep pushing you along. Cause we've all been at that point where you want to quit. And man, this last year and a half, I wanted to quit more than anything else, but getting those nods is what's helping me, push forward and continue the movement forward.
Absolutely. Sean, thoughts on this? You gotta put that.
I do. So, there's two kinds of nods. There's the nods that you get from the bro images, where you've done whatever you've done. You've done something good, you've done something epic, you've done something magnificent, you've barely done anything, whatever the case is. Every once in a while, I randomize my nods. Like if someone does something freaking epic, I won't give them a nod. But they'll do something that is like day to day, I'll give them a nod. Because it can't be all about the cracking it out of the park. You only get a nod when you crack it out of the park. And that's why I randomize it. So giving a nod out to the brohemos is important, but not so frequent that it becomes commonplace. So there's that. And then there's this other nod. Let me just put on my ring of power. And so the ring of power, when I was a kid reading Lord of the Rings, I didn't know that I'd ever wear a ring of power. I just thought it was a fable. I just thought it was mythology. I just thought it was part of a story that was not my story as a young kid, skinny, underperforming kid. And then I got a tier 1 ring. And I've only just got this a couple of years ago, not quite a couple of years ago, but I've been in the game a long time. The moment that I put this thing on, the moment that I felt its heft, the moment it just was on my finger, it was a feeling that I got that I didn't need a nod from anyone. I was giving myself a nod. So earn a freaking ring that you earn and that you can give yourself a nod for. And so all the nods externally from the world, they matter. But you've got to give yourself a nod. That's the one that matters the most. If my wife gives me a nod, that's cool. If my kids give me a nod, that's cool. But you got to be able to give yourself a nod. And that means you've got to seek a ring of power if we're talking Lord of the Rings. You've got to seek something that is worthy of your own nod that you may never achieve. If I didn't have this ring, I wouldn't feel like I'm an underachiever. It's just a representation. That's all it is. But strive for one. Seek something that you can nod yourself on. And I think you'll find you're living a pretty good life.
Yeah, 100%. Rudy, thoughts?
Yeah, you nailed it, brother, with the seeking. And, through all the martial disciplines throughout time, the seeking of self-improvement, self-betterment, the seeking of alignment with truth, alignment with duty. As all four of us here, we were born into this life, not of our own choosing, with great gifts that we didn't earn, right? I mean, we've got these strong bodies, these brains, these minds. We're brought into this sacred space of life and death with a real vehicle to write poetry, as you said, Sean. It's magical. There is duty to that. I'll tell you what's healed me so much is re-embracing my duty. But now the definition of duty and its parameters have changed to a much more holistic place. And to be a great father, meaning a true father, being a great husband, meaning a true husband, being a great leader, meaning a true leader. A true leader is reluctant. A true leader is reluctant. Because, as we talked earlier, that corruption that follows power. When you're seeking that ring and it's pure and it's truthful, your life is going to unfold in a really magical way. Of course, the obstacles will be there. And as you said earlier, Sean, the obstacle is the way. But you'll be doing pretty damn good. And when you look in that mirror occasionally, you're going to say, right on, homeboy. Right on.
Yeah. I love the idea of being able to look at yourself in the mirror and give yourself a little nod. That is, if you can do that every day, and it's interesting. I had a conversation with my kids the other day, and they asked me this question. I said that I was at peace with my life, and they were like, "What does that even mean?" I was like, "Well, if I were to die today, I could die happy. Like I feel like I've done my best today up to this point, so I'm okay with it. Whatever comes next, I'm good. We'll see what happens from there." But the key to be able to look yourself in the mirror on a daily basis and give yourself that nod to keep moving forward, I think that's a critical piece. Now, I have some comments here I was just going to touch on, and then we'll probably do some final thoughts because we're just over 2 hours right now. First off, thank you guys for the conversation. This has been outstanding. I think I'm gonna put it out there right now, probably one of our best. So Sean, Chad, Rudy, thank you guys. Really do appreciate it. It's been fantastic. A couple comments from earlier. Satch jumped in here early on. He said, "Avengers Assemble." We started talking about it. I was like, yes, this is the way it is. Carl jumped in. He said, "I don't think we have Iron Man's budget," which definitely we don't, because that is something we don't have. And he says, "Avengers Assemble." There we go. Carl says, "Romanticism of chaos," which is what we were talking about earlier. Again, a great point that if we utilize that romanticism, it can take us down some pretty interesting paths. Tanya jumped in here earlier, said, "I use the cue of feeling like it's a perpetual/permanent to be a sign I've stepped into a mind trap," which is always something to be aware of. Definitely don't want to be trapped. This is a great one. Carrie jumped in here. Chad's wife here, when he opened up and shared with me the real story, it totally opened up and changed our relationship. I wholeheartedly agree. When I was being honest with my wife in terms of how I was feeling, it changed our relationship 100%.
I do feel, can you put that comment back up real quick, please?
Absolutely. There you go.
I do feel like that's a missed opportunity. I think real could have been spelled REEL if we're sticking to the movie theme. No, I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
That could have been. Yeah, you know what, Carrie? Point to improve for next time. There you go. Add some extra pieces in there. I like that. And then Chris jumped in here. He said, "We'll put a Force Blue description and link in the comments." Excellent. Thanks, Chris. I appreciate that. And then Carl jumps in here. Says, "Thank you and be blessed." 100% you too, brother. Now, let's get some final thoughts. We have covered a lot in the last 2 hours. So anything that's still either bubbling in the back of your brain or anything that you want to finish up with, Chad, let's start with you. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the nod thing, right? Giving yourself the nod, the praise, the ability to pause. And right now I'm going through this process. It's called the Unlifted process. And you go through and it's about words. And as silly as that sounds, I wrote these paragraphs, and then we broke down these paragraphs, and then we talked about it. And currently, I've got some sayings here. Is I say them every morning, and then I have a breath, and then I'll move on to the next one. But it is, I am worthy of my praise. I am working on these things. I'm working on myself. And I was never able to ever put those kind of nods or even think of having some kind of morning routine that encompassed those kind of verbiages, if you will. But now it's, I can walk down the street and be with my boys, and a moment will happen. And I can kind of pause and look around and be like, you know what? I'm doing all right, man. I got two healthy boys. They love the hell out of me. I got a great wife. Things are good. Now, is there going to be chaos around the corner? Absolutely. But how do I react to that chaos? How do I invite that chaos in? How do I control that chaos? And so now I'm learning to kind of have a tap dance with this stuff a little bit. And it all comes from giving myself grace and realizing that the things that happened in my past is not who I am. It's not my story. And, book 2 of the Chad 2.0 is just barely being written, and the ceiling and the sky is the limit. And I really do feel that now, to where the past 20 years, I felt like there was no other way of living but being numb. So again, I appreciate you guys for always having me on and being part of this group.
Absolutely. Always our pleasure having you, brother. Rudy, final thoughts?
Similar to what Sean said earlier too about podcasts and all of that, because of the inherent stoicism of Eastern martial arts, I was hesitant for a long time to be on podcasts or to speak or to, I've been getting a lot of push to do my own. And it has been a real beautiful surprise. It has been a really beautiful surprise. And it is my honor and my pleasure to be here and to be a part of it with you all. And I'm thankful because maybe our audience is, they will glean some diamonds and some gold from this. But I feel that we ourselves, us four, we're growing too, and maybe reflecting and putting more putting proper kit in our H harness now, proper kit to keep ourselves gracious and thankful for being on the path, and checking that mirror every now and again and saying, yeah, you're doing all right. It's been wonderful. It's really been wonderful. I've never been a more fulfilled man than now. So thank you guys.
Absolutely. It is our pleasure having you, brother. Sean, any thoughts?
When you go and see a good movie and you feel like you got your money's worth, right? I mean, how many times have you walked out of a movie disappointed? For me, quite a bit. Sometimes, like, I want my full money back, plus you owe me an extra $10 for wasting my time. And so that is kind of like the life trajectory, man. At the end of it, do you owe yourself some money, or does everyone wish that there was a part 3 or a part 4? I think that's kind of how you got to live your life, man. If no one's looking for the next movie to show up while you're on your deathbed, maybe you did something wrong. And so, crack it out of the park and keep putting out the part 4s and part 5s, and in my case, part 10s. And never hold yourself back from pushing the pace. Just like any leading man in Hollywood, or leading woman for that matter, I can only speak as a man. As a leading man in Hollywood, I only want to be Neo. I only want to be, that's the way I'm built. That's just how I think. But that doesn't mean that Morpheus sucks. There's people out there who want to be Morpheus, and Neo is a bit part to Morpheus. You've just got to identify what you want to be in your own life story. Don't think that you're in a movie. Pick your character in the movie and then start being it.
Interestingly enough, when you first asked that question, my first thought was, I'm Morpheus. I'm the facilitator. I'm the guy that brings other people to other, like, you need to talk to this dude. That's who you need. That's who I am. And I think it's a great point in that nothing is ever going to work out perfectly. Like, it's just not. But part of the process, part of this hero's journey, part of this life that we all have is the realization that that's how it's supposed to be. And all you can ever do, it says right here on the top, in every moment, which is this moment right here, you do your best. You give your absolute all, whatever it is you're doing. And if you keep doing that every day, you'll be able to give yourself a nod at the end of the night, and in the morning, same deal. So that's all I got to finish off here. So I will continue with the same way I ended every other time. Continue to learn, build, and grow. We'll see y'all next week. Chimo, everybody.
Chimo.